In this video, we're going to go over how do we multiply and divide with fractions and mixed numbers. So we're going to start with the example of 1/2 times 4. Remember that when we talk about multiplication, we could think of it as groups of. Okay, so we could think about this as half a group of 4 or 4 groups of 1/2. So let's think about what that would look like. Let's imagine I had 4 of anything, 4 cupcakes. Okay, if I take 1/2 of this group of 4, well, I would break it into 2 parts, and here's my half. How many are in there? 1, 2. Okay, we could also think of it as 4 groups of 1/2, in which case, well, here's 1/2, and here's another 1/2, and here's another 1/2, and here's another 1/2. Together that makes 1, 2 wholes, right? So when we look at multiplication, we can think of it as groups of, but when we're specifically multiplying fractions, we can also think of it just as of, right? Half of 4 is 2. So obviously when we do this out, we're not going to be drawing these diagrams. Okay, so we're going to go over what the actual process looks like. So whenever we see a whole number, we have to write it as a fraction, okay? This is 4 wholes, which means if I want to write it as a fraction, it's 4 over 1, right? 4 wholes. Now from here, we just multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. So 1 times 4 is 4, and 2 times 1 is 2. From here, I could either remember that a fraction bar is really like division, so 4 divided by 2 gets me 2, right? Or I could remember that this is a fraction, so I can simplify it. These are both 2 times tables, so this becomes 2, this becomes a 1. So it becomes 2 over 1, which is the same thing as 2. However, there's something else we can do to make our lives even easier, which is called cross-canceling. Okay, so let's take a look at how that works. We here have 1/2 times 4 over 1. Now cross-canceling, we're going to look at our diagonals here, right? And we're going to ask ourselves if there are any common factors. Can we simplify the diagonals before we even multiply, right? We see these are both 2 times tables, so I'm going to go ahead and simplify them now. This is 2 times 1, and this is 2 times 2. Okay, so now when I multiply, 1 times 2 is 2, and 1 times 1 is 1. Notice that my answer is already simplified. I don't need to do this extra step here. So it's really useful for us. We should always look to see if we can cross-cancel before we multiply. Okay, so in this next problem, we have 5/12 times 3/4. So, like I said, when we multiply fractions together, we're just going to multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. 5 times 3 is 15. 12 times 4 is 48. But then what's the problem, right? I need to simplify this fraction. I can do it, but it's kind of a pain. Okay, I would need to identify a common factor, being 3. These are both divisible by 3. This is 3 times 5. And this is 3 times 16. So we get 5/16. But remember what I talked about, we should always look to see if we can cross-cancel before we multiply. So let's do this again, and let's see if there's any cross-canceling. So 5 and 4. Well, what are the factors of 5? We have 5 times 1, and that's it. And 4? 4 times 1. Do we see any shared factors? Other than 1? No, right? We're looking for factors other than 1. What about 12 and 3? Well, for 3, it's 3 times 1. How can I multiply to get 12? Well, there's 12 times 1, 6 times 2, and 4 times 3. So notice that 3 is a common factor, okay? So we're going to go ahead and simplify. We're going to go ahead and cross-cancel. This is 3 times 1. And this is 3 times 4. Now that I've done that, I'll multiply straight across. 5 times 1 is 5, and 4 times 4 is 16. Again, notice we skipped this whole step, right? Because we cross-canceled before we multiplied. We went straight to a simplified answer of 5/16. Okay, the next problem we're going to take a look at before we dive into mixed numbers is 7/9 times 15/21. So remember, we should look for cross canceling. I've gone ahead and written the relevant times tables that we're going to be using to cross cancel. So 9 and 15, if you notice, those are both 3 times tables, right? This is 3 times 3, 1, 2, 3. So this becomes a 3. And this is 3 times 5. Okay? And then 7 and 21, those are both 7 times tables. This is 7 times 1. And this is 7 times 3. Now that I've done my cross canceling, let's just multiply straight across. 1 times 5 gives me 5, and 3 times 3 gives me 9. So my answer is 5/9. Okay, so what do we do when we have to multiply with mixed numbers? Okay, what we do is we're going to turn our mixed numbers into improper fractions. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 gives me 11/4. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 gives me 16/5. Okay, so we see mixed numbers and we're multiplying or dividing. We're going to turn them into improper fractions. Now that they're fractions, we know how to multiply them, right? We're going to multiply straight across. But what should we do first? Check to see if we can cross cancel. 11 and 5, there's nothing we can do. But 4 and 16, those are both 4 times tables. This is 4 times 1. This is 4 times 4. Okay, now let's go ahead and multiply straight across. 11 times 4 gives me 44. 1 times 5 is 5. Now that's a perfectly acceptable answer, but usually they're going to want you to put your answer as a mixed number. So remember, we can do that by dividing. How many times can 5 go into 44? If we need to, we can do it out here. 5 goes into 44 8 times, which is 40, right? 8 times 5, leaving us 4 left over. So it's 8 and 4/5. Okay? Remember, these two have the same value. So now we're going to talk about division and how do we divide with fractions. So first of all, remember that we can always express division as multiplication, right? This is really saying 1/4 times what will get me 2? Or how many times could I fit 1/4 into 2? So let's go ahead and draw that out. Here's my 2 holes. Okay, 1, 2, right? 2 holes. Now, I want to see how many 1/4 pieces can I fit into 2 holes. So I break them each into 4 parts. And I see this is 1/4, this is 1/4, right? They're all 1/4, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. So we know that our answer here should be 8, right? But what do we actually do, right? Okay, well, 2 is a whole number, so I'm going to turn it into a fraction. 2/1 divided by 1/4. Now, you could sort of think of it like we never divide with fractions. When we see division with fractions, what we're going to do is rewrite it as multiplication, okay? And instead of multiplying by 1/4, we're going to multiply by 4/1. So this becomes 2/1 times 4/1. What happened here? Well, the division sign, we changed to a multiplication sign, and then we just swap the numerator and the denominator, the number on top, the number on bottom. We just flip them, okay? This is called a reciprocal. The reciprocal, okay? So 1/4 and 4/1 are reciprocals of one another. Let's take a look at a couple others. 2/5. Well, what's the reciprocal of 2/5? 5/2, right? We just flip the bottom and the top number. So I know I just went off on a little bit of a tangent, so let's come back. Okay, we see division with a fraction, we change it to multiplication, and then we're multiplying by the reciprocal, so this becomes flipped. Now that it's multiplication, we just talked about how to multiply fractions. 2 times 4 is 8, 1 times 1 is 1, 8 over 1 is just the same thing as 8, right? Which is what we said that we would get. Okay, the next one we're going to look at, 6/7 divided by 9/14. Let's review the process. I change it to multiplication. What am I going to multiply by? The reciprocal of 9/14, which is 14/9. Now that I've changed it to multiplication, we know how to do that. What should we check for? We should check to see if we can cross cancel. 6 and 9, well, those are both 3 times tables. 3, 6, 9 times 1 and times 2 and times 3, right? So this is 3 times 2 and this is 3 times 3. What about 7 and 14? Well, those are both 7 times tables, right? So we can simplify there as well. This is 7 times 1 and this is 7 times 2. Now that I've done my cross canceling, let's go ahead and multiply straight across. 2 times 2 is 4, and 1 times 3 is 3. 4/3, which is also equal to, right, 3 goes into 4 one time with 1 left over, so 1 and 1/3. Okay, the last example we need to look at involves division with mixed numbers. So you may already know where we're going here, but I want to make sure that we cover everything. So just like with multiplication of mixed numbers, we need to turn these into improper fractions. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 5 gives me 11. 11/6 divided by, let's do the same thing with 2 and 1/3. 3 times 2 gives me 6, plus 1 is 7. 7/3. Okay? Now that we've changed each of these into improper fractions, the process is no different than it was here. We're going to rewrite this as multiplication. 11/6 times the reciprocal of 7/3, which is 3/7. Now that it's multiplication, check for cross canceling. Nothing here, but 3 and 6, we can, right? They're both 3 times tables. This is 3 times 1, this is 3 times 2. Okay, now that we've done all this transformation, we can finally multiply straight across. 11 times 1 gives me 11, and 2 times 7 gives me 14. So I hope this video was helpful for you as far as better understanding how do we multiply and divide with fractions in mixed numbers. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.